Mm-hmm.
So, running intro.
Taping, recording.
Yep. In three, two.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new edition of Hue at Home. Well, we all, I guess, love food, uh, and we all think that, well, we need food to live. But sometimes it's not as simple as that. We're going to have a very in depth conversation, and I think all of us will learn a little bit more after today. You know what? Thank you so much, Shaleen Jones, for being here on Hue at Home, and yeah, talking about food, but food issues, and it's part of life. It's been happening for years and years and years, and it still hasn't gone away. Eating disorders. So I'm going to give it to you now. You're in Nova Scotia. You've founded this incredible organization. It's been more than 20 years now. Eating Disorders Nova Scotia. So we're going to start with your story, your lived experience, Shaleen, which makes it so impactful.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Tracy. It's a pleasure to chat with you here this afternoon. And yeah, I started what was now called Eating Disorders Nova Scotia over 25 years ago. I was new to the province, and I had known from my own personal experience how valuable it was to be able to connect with the community and how important that was for my own recovery experience. And I lived with an eating disorder for about 4 or 5 years in my late teens. And for me, being able to connect with people who really understood what I was going through, what that experience was like, the challenges and the ups and downs of recovery, for me, that was really instrumental in my recovery process for myself, staying well in those early days of recovery. So when I moved to Nova Scotia, I was kind of looking around, and there wasn't a similar eating disorders community here. There wasn't and kind of a collective or organized way for folks to connect. And I was in my early 20s, and I just started chatting with like anyone who would listen. And there's a number of us who got involved in that point, and we formed what was then called the Eating Disorders Action Group, because we just believe so strongly that no one should have to go through an eating disorder alone, and that being able to connect with the community was really important. So that's how we got our start many years ago. And since then, we've been providing peer support in various formats to folks across the province of Nova Scotia and really beyond.
So it's interesting, Nova Scotia, and pardon, and we feel it too because we're the prairies, Manitoba. You don't
Yeah.
think of these things, happening here. You're thinking, oh, Toronto, British Columbia, Quebec, or something. What is that? I guess what is it like, especially when you go through it now, 25 years later? Has the problem become bigger, or has it lessened in Nova Scotia?
Yeah, I think the we understand a bit more about eating disorders than we certainly did 25 years ago. So I think the knowledge base has increased. I think people's general understanding that eating disorders are, they're really complex mental illness with that biological driver to them. So I think people's understanding of eating disorders hopefully has changed from what it was 25 years ago. Numbers are not going down, and certainly during the pandemic, there was a very significant increase and folks across the board who were experiencing eating disorders to the point that they needed really acute care. So um, those numbers are still very much a concern for all of us in the eating disorders field. And eating disorders don't really they don't just impact one certain type of person. I think certainly 25 years ago, when we were talking about eating disorders, we were thinking about this as an illness or a condition or an affliction that impacts young, white, middle-aged girls who are into gymnastics. We kind of had this stereotype in our heads around who is impacted. And of course, what we know today is that eating disorders can impact anyone. There are folks who are living with an eating disorder who have no body image concerns, and some who do. Folks who have been negatively impacted by food insecurity, by trauma, or just feeling like they're othered in some way through their identity. Those all put people at risk for developing an eating disorder. So it really does impact folks from all parts of Canada, all different walks of life, ages, weights, genders, etc.
Shaleen, I'm going to ask you this. I'm kind of curious, and I don't want it to be turned in the wrong way, but because it has now grown so much, and as you said, there's more information about it. Is it okay? Do you think that sometimes it's trendy to say that I have an eating disorder, or or maybe just say that I'm a picky eater, just so? I mean, how do you? I guess my question is, how do
Yeah.
you present, or I guess support people that are
Mhm.
kind of thinking it's, oh, kind of fatty, kind of cool kind of thing.
Yeah. I think one of the really interesting things about eating disorders is that many of the behaviors that are associated with them, restrictive eating, like really compulsively exercising, being, very, very focused on food, weight, and shape. These are all behaviors that in our culture are very much encouraged, especially for young people, for young women. And so I think that's one of the challenges with eating disorders is they can often hide in plain sight because they're behaviors that are so socially reinforced and encouraged, and being concerned about your weight, not liking your body. These are just things that are often just seen as like part of the experience, particularly for women and girls. And so I think the trends that we see around uh, focusing on weight loss equaling value as a human being and being small as being the only size to be. I certainly think that these trends absolutely have an impact on folks who are at risk for developing an eating disorder. And we know that repeated restrictive eating significantly increases your risk for developing an eating disorder. And because these are, they're brain-based illnesses, right? So when conditions are just so, and someone experiences, all the risk factors, an eating disorder can really grow and flourish. Yeah.
And now we learn that it's not just your typical white females, it is also males. And it is alarming, the number that has increased, especially like you had mentioned, since COVID.
Mhm.
Does that surprise you?
No, because we traditionally have not done a great job internationally around screening for eating disorders or asking people, what is your relationship like with food eating in your body? So when you don't ask the question, you don't get the information, right? And Canada has a real challenge with surveillance and data and ha having a sense of what is the status of eating disorders in Canada? How prevalent is it? What are the numbers here on the ground? We're really suffering from a deficit in the data. But we have known for many, many years that men and boys are impacted by eating disorders. It's screened for less often. And because we're not trained to see them in boys or in people who have different gender identity or expression, or folks who are living in a larger body, we are much less likely to be doing any kind of screening. And even if those folks do present for support, often they're not seen by their primary healthcare provider or by others as having a problem, and so they aren't getting that referral they need. So to see the number of boys who are being diagnosed, that I think we've known those numbers have been really different than what we have seen, and so it doesn't really surprise us too much. Yeah.
And is it different? I mean, I guess the treatment or the care and the support, is it different for the males than the females?
Not really. I mean, primarily especially with restrictive eating disorders, one of the primary considerations for initial treatment is nutritional rehabilitation. So because these are metabolically driven, brain-based illnesses, making sure that the brain is functioning again, the brain is not in starvation mode, regardless of your gender or your weight. That's a really essential part. Get that re- regulation
Mm-hmm.
back online. And then once people aren't working with a starved brain, they're able to really dig in and work through the issues that led to the development and maintenance of that eating disorder.
What was it for you that was the breakthrough? And I guess it's an ongoing battle, so to speak. Like, you're not totally cured, or are you?
Oh gosh, I mean that's a great question. And I think it's one that in the eating disorders community we talk about all the time. Everyone's experience is so different. Some people do certainly feel that they're managing the illness. They've got a great quality of life, but it's still there and it's something they have to be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And for them, that's a much better place than when they were struggling. For me personally, I feel that my recovery is very solid. Having the eating disorders very much, I think, in the past, it was many years ago now for me. And I think when I reflect on what helped me move to this place, so much of recovery for me was really about practice
Mm-hmm.
and practicing the skills and practicing all the tools and techniques and things I learned in therapy and working with others. And as kind of I figured, about who I was as a person and all that, but really practicing those skills. And that part just takes a really long time, when you're trying to like
Mm-hmm.
unlearn and relearn everything, while living in a world that really promotes disordered eating. That's a struggle. But
Oh.
I do believe that full recovery is absolutely possible.
Mm-hmm. And now you've got another hat, so to speak, that you're wearing, a
Mhm.
co-founder of Body Peace Canada. And
Mhm.
you touched on it briefly because, like you said, an eating disorder, I mean, it doesn't discriminate against anybody. It happens in all different social classes and gender and
Mhm.
BIPOC community. And these are really underdeveloped, and also
Mhm.
they don't have the means, correct? And I mean, with your organizations now, uh, it's a click away.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love hearing that. Click away. Yeah. We know that, about only about 1 in 10 people with an eating disorder actually receive specialized treatment for that. And we also know that the sooner someone is able to receive support, the faster they are able to go in remission and to recover from this illness. So getting access to support and treatment and resources as soon as possible is really critical to this illness, to beating this illness. Not to say that you aren't able to recover if you aren't catching it early, but it allows for treatment to take place before the illness becomes really entrenched,
Mm-hmm.
right? So thinking about all the folks who are not receiving treatment for a variety of reasons. It could be geography, access to treatment, access to funds, like all these variables, as well as feeling like maybe they don't deserve help, maybe they don't deserve treatment, maybe they're not don't feel like they're ill enough to deserve it. So we're really looking at all these barriers folks experience when they're considering reaching out for help and then trying to remove those.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so
So it's
really trying to change that, right?
Yeah, no, and no, it's fascinating. I went on the website, and maybe just sort of explain the mission for Body Peace Canada and what it kind of will give hope to people across the country.
Yeah, yeah. It's the idea that we all deserve to be at peace in our bodies, whatever those bodies are like at any point in time, and extending self-compassion, to ourselves, and feeling at home in our own bodies. So we created the Body Peace Canada to bring together support and resources so that anyone 14 plus across the entire country could access pretty much immediate support. So folks can register for the program. It's pretty quick. And then they can access curated videos. They can do a self-assessment where they can kind of go through a quick survey and figure out, what supports may be right for them. Is this an eating disorder or not? As well as get connected and learn about other resources they can get support from. And of course, a whole variety of peer support programs. So there's drop-in groups, there's groups for trans folks, for BIPOC folks, for women over 40, as well as one-on-one peer support. So just a whole lot of support all in one place.
Oh, it's so amazing, and to go and to know that there are people that care about you, that you're not alone. I think that's a huge factor too as well.
Mhm.
Shaleen, I guess maybe off the top of your head, if a parent out there is listening, or it could be a young person or some, a person out there questioning or maybe struggling with an eating
Mhm.
disorder, what are the first steps?
Mhm. Yeah. So I think approaching it from a place of curiosity, I think for parents, like really pay attention to your spidey senses. And if you feel like there's something going on with your kid, absolutely act on that. I think you had some great people on previously who have really walked that walk and are a great resource. So connecting with others in your community who are knowledgeable about eating disorders. We have a family peer support group that offers some encouragement and validation and hope. So learning more about them. Um, and talking to your child, depending on on their age. There's some great resources available on talking to your family doctor and how to present these issues to them, how to work with your doctor if you've got a child. So really encourage folks, parents, to not wait, to take action as soon as they can, and to really honor that the parental intuition that we get.
Oh,
And then for folks, if there's anyone out there who is feeling like we could be talking about them, that they do have what may be a complicated relationship with food and eating, or if they've been diagnosed with an eating disorder or completed treatment, or have been struggling with an eating disorder, that this support is available to them. We have a team of 55 plus peer supporters who have all been through recovery, who are drawing upon that expertise, that they can connect with and get support from, and absolutely feeling better about your life and yourself, and not being controlled by all that noise in your head about food, eating, not eating. That freedom is absolutely possible.
so 25 plus years of doing this work, what have you learned, Shaleen,
Mm.
about yourself and about eating disorders? I guess that
Mm.
surprised you
Well,
after
that's
all
a
of these
great
years?
question. I think for me, the personality traits that made it easier for my brain to develop an eating disorder, that stubbornness in particular. I think I've tried to use that for good in a way. And I think kind of to take that stubbornness and focus and to turn that into something that can be positive. And so I think that's kind of how it's kind of impacted my life and my world. And I think one thing I'm still like continuing to learn about is how complex these illnesses really are. And we're still learning every day about um, how people recover from them, not just what the experience is like, but the specific techniques and types of therapies and types of support, um, and skills, and what's needed to really help people move forward in their recovery, with all the nuances that make up the experiences that people bring to the table. So I find it really just learning more and more about eating disorders every day as more research comes out.
Wow. You are doing incredible work. Body Peace Canada, the website is bodypeacecanada.ca. If you're in Nova Scotia, they've got eatingdisordersns.ca. But Shaleen, thank you so much for all the work that you do. And I know it's not just you, your whole entire staff and your team. This is definitely something that needs to be more talked about, and it isn't. And
Yeah,
I think that is the real key, right? Is
absolutely.
communication, peer support, listening, and above all, just knowing that you're not alone in this.
Exactly.
Yes, so thank you
100%.
so much for being a guest here on Hue at Home, and wish you and all of your team all the best. And yeah, let's make it like we don't need to have you do your work anymore.
Yeah. Yes, that's the goal.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much, Tracy.
And thank you all for joining in on Hue at Home. We'll see you next time.